Right, couple of post-testing, non-track related videos. This one is picking up on a bit of news from last week from Autosprint in Italy that suggested that Susie Wolff, FIA Academy president, might be putting her hat in the ring for FIA president. Ammar, Susie Wolff as FIA president, your initial thoughts, go.
So I think this is a tough one to debate, only because I do not see a clear possibility for her to be winning a presidential role in this case, because we know that being the president of the FIA involves more than just being a candidate that sort of meets the criteria for the job. There's a lot more that goes beyond it that sort of results in the outcome that the person running for the job would desire. And
Okay. I'm gonna stop you there because I think
right,
let's ask some very specific
let's do that.
questions.
Yeah.
Okay, would Susie Wolff be a better president than Muhammad Ben Sulayem? Question one.
I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I think the first thing you have to do is assess her performance as the president of the FIA Academy. And I am not sure it's 100% successful, although they have set up some goals that are very long term. So maybe it is TBD. I mean, I think one of the ways that I would measure success of Susie Wolff in her particular role is seeing how many eyeballs the F1 Academy can get. And I'm not sure that that's happened in a way that could be measured as success just yet. Now, I recognize that the obstacles are great. It is very difficult, and the FI Academy itself has gone through a couple of changes over the last couple of years. So maybe with time, we can see a little bit more about that. I certainly do credit her with the fact that there is a real possibility of a female F1 driver making it back into the sport. And again, it seems like we're a couple of years away from it, but there's no doubt that she's put in a lot of the work behind the scenes in order for that to happen. So
Okay, is that
popularity of the sport and upcoming drivers, sort of two measurements at least. There's
yeah?
probably more.
Okay, so this is it, right? The barometer of her doing well isn't based on just what she does for females in motorsport, right? It has to be broader than that. Do we see her being able to appeal more broadly than just that demographic?
I think so. So look, if you're just speaking about credentials and leadership, right? When you are in leadership, you don't necessarily need to understand strategy and tactics for each and every sport that the FIA president would govern. You just need to put the right people in place to make set decisions. You need to have collaboration. You need to have an open back and forth kind of the spirit in terms of debate, discussion. And of course, there are tough decisions to be made along the way, but you don't necessarily need to be you're proficient in every single sport. You just need to be able to make sure that you can operate and run an organization. And I could see her being able to do that. There's no reason on that level for her to be able to do that. I do think that the political environment around Formula One and the FIA in this day and age is an issue. Then, of course, there's the other big issue of her husband being the team principal and
Okay.
owner of Mercedes, which we want to talk
You're
about as well.
definitely stepping ahead of the game. I just want to finish this point off, okay? Because I think
Right.
it's very, very easy to say that X would be better than Mohammed bin Sulayem because he's making such a complete mess of it. But that is us looking at it from a very Formula One centric point of view. Formula One is the big earner for the FIA in terms of the revenue it gets from it. But they're going to argue that actually they don't get a huge amount of money back from it. They don't get any of the TV revenue. They don't get any of the sponsorship revenue. It's all of that is harvested by FOM, right? So they're sitting there going, like, why the heck aren't we getting any money? So that's why you get a lot of the antagonism, I think, between FOM and the FIA. That's a deal that's always going to be like that. And you can understand why that's happened because of things that happened in the past. But that's not necessarily MBS's fault. If we look at actually what is happening around the world, we have a fairly strong Formula E championship, which we thought was going to go down the pan. We've got a really strong WRC championship. We've got a really strong World Endurance Championship. Qualifying for that was yesterday. Ferrari on pole. Again, this is stuff that is important, that is working well. But we only hear about Formula One because that's what we're interested in. But the FIA has to cover a huge amount of other sports, and more than that, they're supposed to be supporting grassroots motorsport, which actually in countries in the Middle East and Africa, actually that is what Muhammad Ben Sulayem personally has been supporting through. Is in a slightly corrupt way, isn't it? Because he's got his president's fund, and he's promised millions from his president's fund to fund these smaller clubs in smaller countries, and ultimately they are the people that are voting for him. So it helps him, but it's not a insubstantial aim. It's not something that we should criticize necessarily. It's a good thing. So I think that question of whether Susie Wolff would do a better job than Muhammad Ben Sulayem does need to be couched a little bit away from the fact that when it comes to Formula One, he's been a complete disaster.
I mean, I think that's fair, and I think you could put up anyone's candidacy against Mohammed bin Sulayem in that regard, right? It's not just Susie Wolff. If whoever else would be in the running for it, and I have no earthly idea who that would be, they would have to be going up against him in terms of credentials. So whoever comes in to be the challenger will probably not have the same credentials in terms of the proven ability to make these sports work. And look, we talk about the Formula One as a disaster, but it isn't really a disaster in terms of its popularity, or even if you look at sort of the monetary outcome of everything.
Okay, but
the sport is popular.
Okay,
so,
okay, but everyone would correctly argue that is not down to MBS. It's the FIA are not promoting the sport.
Sure, but it hasn't ruined it either. It hasn't, and I've told you time and time again, negative news is just as good as positive news. Indifference is the issue.
Not when okay, but Ammar, not when he is actively saying that the sport is not worth the 20 billion that it's being valued at. That is actively reducing the sport's value.
He's saying
that's him overstepping the mark, isn't it? That's not.
Of course he is.
That is not publicity that FOM or F1 wants. That is a disaster for me.
As we live in a day and age where heads of organizations and countries love to say whatever they want to say, and now it's a question of what you take seriously. So I agree with you. That's not something he should say.
That will have a serious impact on the market. So that has a tangible. Well, it did at the time. So
what impact did it have?
It dropped the share price over that weekend.
Okay, that's fine. And that the share price will increase too. That happens all the time. That's not unusual.
But that is a tangible effect of the FIA president meddling in something that isn't aren't his
Who
affairs.
knows if Susie Wolff could be a meddler or not? You have no earthly idea. Or the very fact that she takes that on might, in the minds of many people, because she's a woman, drop the value of the sport anyway. So that could also happen. I'm not suggesting that will be the case. My point is, we cannot expect these people to not say things. I mean, at the end of the day, governors, leaders, stewards of these organizations do like to make.
Okay, you say that, but I never heard Jean Todt talking about the coffers.
Fair enough, that was his style. It was his style. It's also a different day and age.
So that's what I mean. So it's not everybody. We agree on that at least. Okay, second question.
Fair enough, but a lot of them.
Second question. Okay, in terms of, do we think that if Susie Wolff went up for election against Muhammad bin Sulayem, that she would win? Does she have a shot?
I'm a little bit lost because I do not know the mechanics of everything there. You'll probably explain it to me, but as you alluded to earlier, this is a lot about gaining political support, and I don't know that Muhammad bin Sulayem will give it up. I mean, I think part of this is only possible if Muhammad bin Sulayem decides to retire from that position, right? Because if he wants to stay in there, evidence points to the fact that he is going to be in there. As in, if you look at everyone that have they been technically fired or they've resigned of his leadership group, and there's a lot of NDAs and stuff like that happening, he seems to be winning all of those battles, even if he is in the right or the wrong, right? And so in order to win that election, I don't know that would happen or not. I do not have enough understanding of the mechanics of it. It certainly seems like Muhammad bin Sulayem has got everybody, under him working in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is that this is a very different presidency to, say, Jean-Marie Balestre in terms of where he sees himself, right? So Balestre was famously pompous and I am the biggest thing in motorsport. I've done all this stuff. You should listen to me. I am the boss. MBS is similarly doing something like that. But where Jean-Marie Balestre was thought that his position was so impregnable, he forgot to actually run for re-election. MBS is sort of battening down the hatches and boarding up the windows. He's created a situation where the FIA essentially marks its own homework. There is no accountability there, both on from a regulatory point of view and from a financial point of view. That's why he's able to set up a president's fund and give his own personal money, which is not actually his own personal money, to all of the clubs that he thinks will support him. But that is also important, right? If you take that side of it away, the way that the FIA president is elected is by these by individual clubs in individual countries. Now, the fact that the UK is such a massive hub for motorsport makes no difference when it comes to the FIA presidency, because they still only have one vote. Same with the United States. But all of these little countries that have motorsports that are just starting to build themselves up in the Middle East, in Africa, and they are countries with motorsport programs that need to be supported. They need to have this investment put into them. They're the places that Muhammad Ben Sulayem is campaigning. So all of the stuff that is happening on our side of the world that we're outraged by, all of the problems with swearing, the problems with jewelry, the fact that they won't pay for permanent stewards, the fact that they set up a investigation based on a bogus article to investigate Susie Wolff, the 20 billion quote, all of those things. You put all of those things together, there's stuff that we are outraged by, but the clubs that vote for the FIA president don't care about that. They want to know how much cash they're getting in their coffers. And unfortunately, Susie Wolff represents a small minority, I think, of that group of clubs, which is why, number one, I think the story is complete nonsense. But number two, even if it weren't nonsense, I don't think she stands a hope in hell of winning a presidential election against him.
Yeah, I mean, this is more about having a political apparatus, strategy, and a desire than as opposed to credentials. It really, I mean, we could put all the credentials aside; it wouldn't even matter. And I think you're right. If you cannot influence large pockets of voting members across different countries, game over. It doesn't even matter. And then I think there's also the question of, again, a female being in leadership is not something that, while we in the Western world, people in certain parts of the world don't value a woman in leadership. And that's just the reality, whether I agree with it or not. And I think so that political battle would be very difficult for her to fight, let alone being able to then prove her credentials as well. So you're right. The steep slope to crime is pretty big. But there's also the one obvious elephant in the room, Shez, that we haven't talked about.
What elephant?
Her husband being the team president and part owner of a Formula One team.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
So, yeah, I mean, there would have to be some kind of separation there, right? I mean, there's just no.
They have to get divorced.
No. With a separation, she'd probably have to defer on some of these. I don't know, the conflicts where Mercedes is involved directly. I think that would be a messy one, by the way, Shez. It's really hard to kind of determine what that looks like. I think they would have to have a real conversation about. It doesn't necessarily mean they have to separate. Toto could step away too for the time that that she is the president too. There's no reason why we need to break up a marriage or FIA presidency, Shez. Come on.
Yeah, FIA above everything.
Oh my goodness.
Sacrificial.
What do you think? You don't think that would play out kind of badly?
Oh no, I mean, yeah, it was the optics aren't great, are they? But then we have to come back to what we said at the beginning of this, right? That Formula One makes up a small part of the entire portfolio that the FIA covers, and one team within that has a direct connection with the FIA president in that situation. Yeah, that's fine. But in any other industry, the person at the top could recuse themselves from any involvement in decisions pertaining to that particular team. It doesn't mean that they have to recuse themselves from anything to do with the FIA, with Formula One. But in fact, the FIA president's role within Formula One directly actually isn't that huge. They're there in terms of like regulatory stuff, technical regulations, sporting regulations, writing those regulations, ensuring that at the track the race is carried out safely. Now, how there would be a conflict of interest between that role and the role of Mercedes under Toto Wolff? You could argue perhaps the technical regulations, but the FIA president doesn't have a role in writing them. So again, I think that's a non-starter. It's easy for her to recuse herself from that and get involved in all the other bits and pieces that the FIA do. And I think your point about why isn't it that Toto Wolff should step down from his role? I think, yeah, it's a pertinent one. And I think, but I think I look at this from both their points of view. Like, why should there be an artificial ceiling placed on either of their careers when their careers are disparate? Like, it's not like Susie Wolff is trying to become a team principal, right? and if it's possible for her to do that role without interfering in or being influenced by the team that her husband runs, there shouldn't be a glass ceiling placed upon someone because of that. And similarly, Toto shouldn't have a glass ceiling placed upon what he can achieve at his chosen profession. They're both very good at what they do. So why should they be stopped from doing what they're good at, especially if it's good for the sport?
I love the nuance, but most people wouldn't even understand the connection of that. Let's be honest about that. And let's also not forget that we're talking about a sport in which one team owns 4 cars too. Like, so there is some precedent for it, to your point, if such that there may be, right? But we never think about the fact that Red Bull has a second team in the sport. So why not? I'm sure that could be argued too. I mean, the more we're discussing this, Shez, the less reason I see for her to want this job. Like, forget the idea of running of it. Like, why would you do that? And by the way, these conflict of interest would probably make more sense if she were in the running for FOM president. That would make a lot more sense than it does in this regard. But I agree with you. I don't see that happening, and I'm not sure that she's really one. So this article is a bit of a nothing burger, but here we are.
I mean, absolutely. And I think it's been thrown out by someone, I won't say who's trying to destabilize a certain court case in France that Susie might be bringing. But anyway, this is always a tricky one for us because, you know, it's pretty sensitive and it's based on a story that is, as Ammar says, a complete nothing burger. But as usual, let us know what you think. Please like, please subscribe, please leave us a comment. We'll read every single one. We will reply to as many as we possibly can. We'll be talking about some testing bits and pieces over the weekend. We will see you guys in one of those.
Later.